Hello, welcome to voice note number 3, um, where I just yap about how I'm feeling in a style in which, if you want to watch me talk, you can, but if you want to just play it in the background, you can also do that because probably a little long. Um, it's quite windy today, as you can probably tell, but I did get a mic. We've leveled up, so I'm hoping the mic helps with the wind. If not, this will be a bummer, but it's fine, whatever. We're learning. Um, But yeah, I kind of just sat here in silence for a minute before I started recording because I knew that I wanted to record and that I wanted to record outside because I enjoyed doing that for the last video. But I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to talk about because I had a lot, Gemini season is in full swing. So I have a lot of thoughts. So I'm going to go back to picking up on where I left off last time. So after I recorded last time, I also brought my tarot deck out in case the spirit moves me, but we'll see. Um, TBD's when I was like, I need a tarot deck. I can't just think of stuff to say off the top of my head. I need prompting. Okay. So what I did last week after I recorded was I sat here and doodled. That kind of became part doodle, part poem. And I wanted to read it to y'all because I think the how I felt while I was writing this was very telling for me in terms of my relationship with being creative and with surrendering because I have dabbled in poetry for many years, probably since I was 14, and I've never really fully taken it seriously, but I have like fully performed before and like have been told that I'm good at it. And I just like have this weird on again, off again relationship with it where I forget about it and then I like really, really need to express something and I'll just scribble some stuff down or I'll write it in a notes app and then I kind of forget about it. And so as I was writing this, I was sitting with how I was feeling as I was writing it and I was like, I've figured out why. But let me read it first and then I'll explain my thought process. So the first line I wrote is I want to let myself be free, free to follow the impulses of my creativity and maybe trust someone to see me and all my insecurities. I resist being burdened by this flesh, but I have yet to see how far my body can go. How can I resist the limits of a body I do not know? Maybe it's time to let the fear go. Then I wrote another one. I don't know if I'll read that one. But so when I was writing that, I hit a point when I turned the page. There's like stuff flying in my eye. I hit a point where I turned the page and I was like, I don't know how to end this. And I realized that not knowing the ending generally prevents me from starting a lot of the time. And I was like, oop, not me dragging myself. But it's true. I think, like, especially with poetry, in the beginning it's cute. You have a good opening line. You're like, all right, cool. Like, how can I build off of this? What's tea? And then you're going. And then I think for me, I always find myself trapped in like a particular rhyme scheme. And then I can't come up with enough rhymes. And I don't know if I like the rhyme scheme enough to commit to it. And so I'm like, I need to end this. But I'm not confident on the ending. So I just feels like just it just feels like all the momentum from starting doesn't fully land with the same oomph as the start. And I think especially how I write poetry, most of the time it's like I get the whole thing at once. Like there are so many times where I'll just be like sitting and then I'll hear an idea and then I'll hear like a whole poem or a whole song just in my head before I've even had a chance to write them down. So there's so many like poems and other ideas that I've had that I just like could not write down as fast as they came through. Um Versus other times where it's like I just have one part of the idea but the full thing hasn't unfolded yet, so I don't know where it's going and I find myself feeling more uncomfortable with those types of things. um, but I realized once I made that connection, I was like, oh, I think that's a broader metaphor for just life in general. Like, there's so many things that we do not start because we don't know how they'll end. And we don't trust ourselves to do the revision process. So, like, take a step back from it and try to um, look at it from a different perspective and maybe adjust it. I think especially with like big life things, it's like, well, if I just do the thing, I can't edit it afterwards. It's happened. It exists. It's out in the world. But I think with creativity, it's like no one has to see your first draft if you don't want. But I think there can be a perfectionist that comes through that like really prevents you from even starting in the first place. And like I think also having to sit with something that you feel like is just not good enough, quote unquote, or like not a full reflection of your capacity or skill set, is a little humbling. You're like, oh, I have this idea of like what type of artist I am, what type of creative I am, what type of poet I am, what type of singer I am. And then you make something that's kind of meh. And then it's like, okay, well, do I want to sit here and try to make it better or do I want to just let it go? And I think it's also fair to let it go and just be like, okay, that was a cool idea. It didn't really get me all the way there, but because I got that first aspect out, like there's something else that's like more fully formed that can come through. Like, especially for me, most of my writing has always been more essay based writing, more um, nonfiction based writing. I'm getting distracted by a lot of different things. I'm trying to focus, but the wind is throwing me off, and there's background noise. Anyway, yes. So I tend to do more essay writing. I did journalism in high school. I did magazine writing in college, um, and I forgot where I was going with that. Essay writing. Oh yeah, so with essay writing and stuff, like I think most people will say like, "Oh, you should do an outline first and then do a first draft and then edit the first draft and stuff." But I just got to a point where sometimes I would like draft something and then I would just rewrite the whole thing from scratch. Like I disliked editing so much that I would just be like, "Okay, I got the general gist. Let me just rewrite it entirely and then see if that lands better." Um and I don't know if that's particularly normal, but I don't think it's necessarily bad either. Um but yeah, I just thought that was really profound in terms of like, wow, how many things are there that I do not start because I'm afraid of the ending or I don't know the ending, and that makes me uncomfortable. Because in reality, like the only function of knowing the ending is to evaluate the thing, like evaluate whether or not it's good. And it's like, well, why is it important to know whether or not it's good? Does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? Is that the entire point? I don't think it is. But there's some part of me that thought that. So, um, yeah, so that was that. Let me see. Um, mm-mm. The other one I wrote, I'm like debating if I want to share it. One, because I can barely read it because I decided to write in cursive, and I never do that anymore. But I just felt like I wanted it to be more flowy and less restrictive than print writing, which led me to a whole separate thought process that I was talking to my cousin about in terms of like, kids these days. Not knowing how to write in cursive and like whether or not that is reflective of how digitally focused we are as a society. Um, that we don't see the value in cursive anymore because it's not as practical or whatever. I haven't fully explored that, but I'll just throw that out there. So, this other one is more about being an artist. So, I put to be an artist is to be seen, to put your messy, raw insides on display, hoping someone will see them and say, me too. Make your pain bigger than you. To be an artist is to unfold in public, in a world that is far from friendly, and still put your insides on display, hoping you'll be okay. And I feel like this one, this is what it looks like, really captures like my fear of visibility and like the vulnerability that comes with it. And part of like what I was thinking of when I was writing it was when I went to CultureCon in New York many moons ago. Tracy Ellis Ross was there, and one thing she said that really has stuck out to me, and I still remember many years later, is that you shouldn't compare. And I think she also got this from someone else. So I don't remember who the reference point was. I want to. My brain is saying Alice Walker. I could be completely wrong, but I feel like it was maybe another a writer or something. But she basically said like you cannot compare your insides to somebody else's insides, and you can't compare, you shouldn't compare your insides to someone else's outsides. Essentially saying like we compare ourselves and judge ourselves against like what people are presenting to us, but like we genuinely have no way of knowing what someone's internal experience is like whatsoever. And so there's just no point in comparing because someone could have all the things that you want on paper and be miserable and just like really dislike themselves, be really unhappy, whatever the case may be. And then, vice versa, someone could have a situation that like seems challenging or something that you wouldn't, particularly like be chomping at the bit to get into. um and they could be perfectly happy and like perfectly content with themselves. And it's not a matter of like you need to know that to gauge whether or not you want to compare yourself. It's really just like a you shouldn't compare yourself at all. But I think communicating and art is the only time we get a glimpse of what someone's insides are. And I think that is very vulnerable because there's like um I don't know, there's just like a different layer of critique that's possible. And I think generally artists are very sensitive. We're sensitive about our shit. And so to be critiqued on your art feels like you are being critiqued as a person. And I think I'm still in the process of learning how to create things that feel alive and authentic and genuine. But also are removed enough from me that if someone has a critique that I don't necessarily agree with, or maybe a critique that doesn't come in good faith, because I feel like if someone is like trying to say something in bad faith, like I probably shouldn't really care anyway. But you know, if someone says a critique that I take personally because I'm sensitive, and it's like hopefully it's like removed enough from me that I can see that as not a full critique on my personhood, which I think is easier said than done. And there are a lot of people in the public eye that we see struggle with that. So um, it's definitely a process, but it's like a process that I feel like I just needed to name for myself because I think inherently, or just generally because of who I am and the type of work that I do, which I haven't explained in this video. Um, but long story short, I'm an intuitive personal growth coach, and I'm working on building out my first program that is really designed to help people reclaim the most authentic version of their lives by, you know, unpacking the ways that systemic oppression impacts how we show up in the world, using your birth chart to help you identify what are some authentic ways you relate to different aspects of your life, and then using energy work to clear any remaining blocks and help call in your authentic energy. And all of those different components are like very reflective of like my own personal journey to connecting with showing up in the world authentically and embodying freedom and just like being more myself. Like I had to unlearn the ways that systemic oppression shaped how I saw myself. I had to find a baseline to understand who I was outside of all those things, and I needed to clear the imprint of those things energetically as much as intellectually, and I needed to clear them from my body as much as I was clearing them intellectually. um so I say all that to say this program is very much like my baby. Like this is something that like is the most me thing that I have ever put out into the world and that I am sharing with other people. um and that's very scary, and there are very few people around me that have done something similar. And so I feel like I just have to be very realistic with myself about like the level that I'm trying to get to in my life and what that will require of me. And part of that is visibility. And I think that's something that like we don't really talk about that much. We don't talk about Bruno. Um, but it's a skill. It's a skill to be able to hold people's attention well and to not let that like completely shift how you perceive yourself, and to not like get a super inflated ego, but to not also completely dismiss it and like miss an opportunity to like positively impact people. Like there's just like I don't know, in my mind, and I think my teacher at least would agree with me probably if I talked to him about this, my energy work teacher. But like attention is a form of energy, and as someone who is an energy worker, I'm very mindful about my energy. And so if people are sharing their energy with me by engaging with me and engaging with my work, then I need to be, or I would like to be, thoughtful and intentional and in integrity with how I hold space for that energy as well. So I'm like getting cold. So that's where I'm at in my journey. I don't know if that's always what I'll be talking about, but I figured I'd share that for now in case some aspect of that resonates with you. Or if you're just a creative with big dreams that's like, I want to do this thing but I'm so scared and I don't know why. That might be part of it. Maybe you're just afraid that you don't know how it ends, and maybe that's a little perfectionism, sneaking in the background, which, happy to help with if you want. I'm doing a workshop series right now, and also doing one-on-one sessions with the method that I described. So if it sounds interesting to you, you can learn more on my website. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say today. I'm I'm pretty tired and overstimulated a little bit by everything that's going on outside. Um, but yeah, I'm in the process of like figuring out what another offering could look like, and I'm very excited about it, but I need more time to like fully integrate it. There's also like a lot of media I've consumed that I haven't had a chance to talk about at all. I really wanted to talk about the drama, which I also feel like the way that we consume media, it's like once something isn't actively in theaters anymore, it's like suddenly completely drops off the face of the earth in terms of conversation. I'm like, I'm still processing it. Um, yeah, I watched the drama. I watched Super Mario Galaxy. I watched The Worst Prada 2. I watched Send Help. I watched K-pops, and I have thoughts about all of them, and I just haven't gotten around to it. I also have listened to Kehlani's new album, Ray's new album. I just discovered two new artists today. One of them is Brazilian, and she's a rapper. She's amazing. And the other person, um, I believe is Latina, but also French. And like, I'm having a good time. So maybe the next one will just be more about media. And I'm reading a new book as well. So, sometimes I can't keep up with myself. The rate of consumption does not necessarily match the rate of creation, and we're working on that. We're working on that. That's the goal. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and let me know what you thought, what resonated with you, where you are in your relationship with your creativity. And yeah, let me know if you have questions about any of my current offerings. And I will see you next time on the internet somewhere. Bye.